Now, Islam is not a religion commonly understood, all right? Now, Islam has its own set of morals and the own list of good, bad, harm, benefit, peace, war, and all these things. In Islam, apostasy is both a rebellion against the faith-based policies and whatever it has created around, as well as an act of public disorder in some sense in some countries. I mean, you need to, in Saudi Arabia, you need to appreciate that somebody who leaves Islam is a terrorist, okay? So individuals do not have the right to leave the Ummah. So the principle of punishing those who refuse to comply, or they endanger the social order, which they are part of, this you have everywhere. So religious doctrines like Judaism, Christianity, and they also have this in the Bible. Where in Deuteronomy, I mean, even your brother or your sister are supposed to tell on you if you decide to leave the faith. Now, in Islam, in the Quran, you only have, well, one sentence, I would say, which talks about this, and this is if they turn away, seize them and kill them wherever you find them, in 489. This is the only one which I would understand talks about apostasy, in other words, turning away from what is believed by the others. And then every time they return to the influence of disbelief, they fall back if they do not withdraw for it, and so on. So there's others who talk about this. Anyone who, after accepting the faith, utters unbelief, on them is the wrath of Allah, and theirs will be a dreadful penalty. And those who becometh a renegade or die in their disbelief, such are those works have fallen both the world and hereafter. Such are the rightful owners of the fire, they will abide therein. So in other words, this is God saying, if you go and apostatize, if you leave Islam, then I'm going to punish you like in any other way that the non-believers are being punished. But it's only the one which says that you need to be killed. Then the only place where it gets a little bit, well, worse, or it actually gets physical, is as usual in the hadith, where it says, okay, if somebody leaves, kill them. And if they leave, then kill them. And then you have the muwatta of Imam Malik, says, should be executed, does not repent, should be executed, otherwise he should be executed. So in other words, you have different groups within the Sunnis, where the Hanbali, for example, have two opinions, where they say some believe should be given a period for repentance consisting of 3 days, while others of the opinion that he is to be granted no time for reconsideration, but should be offered Islam, and if he doesn't accept it, kill them. The Shafi, for example, say if a Muslim becomes apostate, then the Imam shall grant him 3 days. He is not to be killed before this period expires, for the apostasy of a Muslim from his faith often results from his confusion. So then if he comes back, you're allowed to allow him back. If not, then you kill him. Maliki, 3 days also, is to be released. If he does not, he is to be killed on the 3rd day at sunset. So the Malikis are very, very explicit in this. Hanifis are a little bit different. If he accepts Islam thereafter, is good. If not, he is to be killed. For Allah says, kill those who believe in many gods. And they are quoting 9.5.
I thought that the Maliki was 10 days, not 3.
Okay, I have it here 3 days. If he repents on the 3 days, he is to be released, but if he is not, he is to be killed on the 3rd day at sunset. This is what I have as Malikis. And I don't have this. Yes, I have the source. I have 2 sources. One is answering, should I put this in there so people can take a look what the individual, because one I have from Answering Islam and one I have from WRFnet, Concept of Islam, WRF number. So I can put both of these in there so everybody can go and take a look for themselves what I've done here, what I've looked at. So,
in reality, it doesn't matter if somebody leaves Islam, somebody kills them. They don't worry about these technicalities. So it's that, is that.
Okay, you just said, regardless of what it says here in the various legal, whatever opinions, the reality is that sometimes you get killed and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get killed only spiritually. In other words, people are ostracized. In other words, they're chucked out of the Ummah and people will not speak to them. Like in Scientology, you're a disgusting person. They actually have this SP, the suppressive person. You have expressions in Scientology for people who leave and are then like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they also have this. They don't call us the suppressive person, but in Scientology you have this, that people are actually being told they have to cut with children, with parents, spouses amongst each other, family members, individually with everybody else, when they leave Scientology. And the same thing is true with Islam, where people are not killed physically, but spiritually. In other words, they are being shunned, they are being shut out of the mosque, they are no longer allowed to see the people, and the people, members of the mosque, are being told not to speak to that person. So this is the way that it works. So if you're not killed, you're lucky. But today, come on, if you're not in an Islamic country or a Muslim majority country, nothing happens. There are some cases where we're really, well, very conservative parents will go and kill their own children because they have left Islam. But this is very rare. In reality, nothing happens to us. So
isn't that more of a like particular culture thing? Like I think like with like Bangladeshis and Pakistanis and that region, they tend to you know, there's a whole honor killing thing. But then you've got like Somalis where I don't think they kill; they usually just like disown.
Well, I think it's more personal. I think it depends on the maybe the tribe or maybe the environment or whatever it is, because you can't generalize and say, well, in Bangladesh this is what happens. I think it's very regional. I think it's very much individual.
Well, obviously, but you know, you can always see if there's like there's a pattern where the majority of one group tends to work a certain way.
Okay, but now you need to go one step further, because now they're looking for excuses not to kill the people. And now this is where the decision of the imam comes in. And this is where the tribal thought comes in, what you are talking about. Because now the people are saying, well, in the Quran it also says that somebody who leaves Islam and then fights Allah or fights Islam or fights the community, if they don't do that, then we might as well leave them go. And others are saying, it doesn't matter whether they actively leave, they are traitors from the Ummah and therefore they need to be killed or punished or whatever. So you have very different approaches to this, depending on the tribe, depending on the region, depending on who it is who is looking at this, because you have different sets of rules and different options laid out in front of you. So you have, okay, maybe it's 10 days, maybe it's 3 days. So you have a different number of days that you can reconsider. You have different options regarding of what your actions are afterwards. Then you can also go and say, well, he didn't really do anything against Islam, so if his conscience tells him, then he is blinded by God, and then we should just let him go and let God punish him. Others are saying no.
There are also some scholars that that whether or not they should be killed, I think they judge it on gender. Like I've heard some rulings that if it's a man who apostates, he should be given 3 days to repent, and if he doesn't, death. But what was that ruling about women? I think lifelong imprisonment in the house, not death.
I see two problems with the apostate killings, just thinking about it just now. One comes from the Hadiths, where you have the story of the guy who used to write down the sayings of Muhammad, who ran to Mecca. You know the one I'm on about? The guy who ran away. Because he inserted a word. He suggested a word to Muhammad, and Muhammad adopted it, so he ran to Mecca. And the
that was a Christian that converted to Islam and then converted back to Christianity.
That's small facts.
Because he realized that you could enter a word into the Quran.
Can I finish?
There was
he ran off to Mecca, and he ran into Muhammad again when Muhammad came back and was presented again in front of Muhammad. And Muhammad just sat there and didn't say anything. So he got up and walked away, a live, living, free man. And Muhammad's only response was to turn to his guards and say, "Why didn't you kill him?" And they said, "Guards, we were waiting for a sign." And a wink. And Muhammad said, "Prophets don't wink." Now the point is, he wasn't killed. So due to the laws of the last thing counts as scriptural, according to that, you shouldn't kill apostates. The only time it came back into sort of like a killing field was with Abu Bakr and the war of the apostates. Because then
Guerrilla
he
war.
started killing them.
Okay, this is where I was just trying to go, because I said you have different approaches now. So
But
you have different
which
ways
counts
of
more?
looking at somebody who is leaving, whether or not he does something or not, is then being taken into consideration. And with these different approaches, you have a whole like menu of things that you can do. And these are the different positions that are being applied depending on the level of your, let's say, your own attitude within the family, within the group, or whatever. If you are fundamentalist, if you are conservative, if you are more orthodox, you will more tend to go towards the killing, just to be sure. And if you are more lenient and more open-minded, then you will say, well, actually, let him battle it out with God, and then it's fine. So there's different approaches
Can I
which
just
are
say
being
something on
used
that?
in different ways by different people. And yes, people in the UK have been killed because they left, because the family could not handle it. This is what we just, somebody, I think Raven said this with the, or was it Mr. Ananos, with the honor killings, where Pakistanis, for example, have a very, very strong sense of family honor for some odd reason, and say that if somebody leaves Islam, then it is a blemish on the family, which can only be expunged by killing the person. And that is it. This is the way that it works. Okay, so now go crazy.
But now,
Well, there's also the idea that killing someone is actually doing them a favor, because like to kill, like if they leave Islam, then they're sinning, and if you just leave them to go about their life, they'll keep on sinning more and more and more.
Yeah, but they don't have time to repent.
And eventually die. They'll go to they'll get to a worse and worse and worse level of hell. So some people rationalize it as saying you're doing them a favor because you're killing them now, and so they'll get like a certain level of hell if you kill them now. Whereas if you just let them live a life of sin, they'd end up worse off in the hereafter. So you're doing them a favor. To kill them is a kindness.
yeah, but the thing is,
Yeah,
you see, when you leave Islam, the perception is, I mean, this is the statement when you leave Islam, you're basically saying by your actions, Allah is not the true God. That's the point of why you leave Islam, because you're making the declaration that this religion is not true. That's why when you're looking at the level of if you say punishments that you get, if you're conservative, if you're stringent and whatnot, from my own experience, that just sounds like, let's see how we can dilute it depending where we are geographically in the world as to what we can get away with legally. The more information society gets on the reasons of punishment for if you leave Islam. Like if you're living in a Western culture, we'll adopt a more watered down version. We'll just ostracize you in the community, and we'll treat you as spiritually dead. Whereas if you're living in a more proactive Islamic country, then you get the death penalty.
Okay, I don't know if anybody has noticed, but nobody so far has mentioned anything about there is no compulsion in religion. Your religion to you and mine to mine.
Yeah, but that was
nobody has mentioned that yet.
Yeah, but that's abrogated. I mean, anybody that knows when you look at the revelation. Yeah, but when you're looking at the sequential revelation of Islamic texts in the Quran, that's one of the earlier surahs, and the kill everybody comes later. So anybody looking at your religion to you and my religion to me, there's no compulsion in religion, they will see that as those being abrogated by the latter and also abrogated by the hadith as well.
Okay, but you could always, the question is, if somebody in Hyde Park comes to you and says, okay, I am leaving, and what should happen to me? The answer that you can give to somebody that you are discussing with in Hyde Park is there's a number of options. The number one thing that you should say, okay, do you personally believe? Do you personally believe? You, the person, not the Imam, not Islam, do you personally believe that somebody who is no longer a Muslim should be punished by the people or should be later punished by God? The second thing that you can do is, because it says these things in the Quran, because the sentences still are present in the Quran, nobody has deleted them, they should still to some extent be applicable to a certain extent in cases like these. Yes or no? Do you accept these sentences? So you always need to push it on the person whether he or she accepts it. But anyway, the point is, it should be it should be really, really sad if you need to resort to tactics like these. You have to be part of us, and if you are not part of us anymore, we need to kill you. I mean, this I think is the weakest thing in Islam of all of the arguments, that you need to threaten people with violence and death should they decide to think for themselves.
Can I just put something to you? If you go by the biblical narrative, right, that the Bible is the word of God, let's just assume for this discussion that it is. Then Muhammad comes along with this Allah and makes all his statements that if you leave, if you die. Going back to the biblical text makes it clear that Satan's running the planet, so to speak, that all the governments and religions are in his hand. So if that is true, let's just go along with the narrative. If that is true, exactly what you'd expect a demonic religion to say, that if you leave, you will die. That's exactly what the religion.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've actually made this point a number of times with different people. In fact, I remember I was having a conversation with someone. You remember a couple of months ago, there was that preacher in Ireland who went to court for saying Islam is satanic.
Yep.
And I was having a conversation with someone, and I just said, yeah, but the thing is, and I just said exactly what you said. You know, I even quoted some parts of the Bible where Jesus said, "Beware false prophets" and things like that. I mean, if you actually think about it, like, to a believing Christian, Islam as a religion is basically a fuck you to Christianity. You know,
absolutely,
everything.
From a process,
yeah, because like every claim about Christianity, Islam says is not true. And you know, I mean, the entire point of Christianity is the crucifixion. And then you got Islam saying not only did it not happen, but Allah, for a laugh, I guess, actually decided to trick the Christians into thinking this happened and switched in with a doppelganger, a lookalike. I mean, it's so stupid.
Yeah, but you need to believe it.
That's the process of elimination.
Yeah, but it shows how weak Islam really is. It shows how weak the Islamic God really is.
You say that, Sam, I take your point. But it also, if the biblical narrative is true, it shows how strong the Islamic religion is, and it also shows how indoctrinated or indoctrinating the Islamic religion is, that it can put that kind of...
Of course, if Judaism's true, then that disqualifies both Christianity and Islam.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, there are actually some really fundamentalist Jews today who protest against Israel for the entire reason that, according to the religion, Israel is formed and the Jews gathered to it by the coming of the Messiah. The Messiah hasn't come yet, so the current Israel is a false Jewish state.
Okay, any other opinions about ex-Muslims? What about fee crooks? Any other comments?
I actually did have one. When he said that there is no compulsion in religion as being that no longer applies. Well, it kind of does, because we've been over this on this show again and again and again. We know the context of that. We know it says that you shouldn't follow the religion of your people or your forefathers. You should follow Islam. Islam's the correct religion. Yours is the wrong religion. We know that's what it means. There is no compulsion in there is no compulsion in religion. The right way has been made clear from the wrong way. We've gone over this so many times.
If the death penalty for apostates was so important, why isn't that clearly in the Quran? You know, that's also a weird thing, because many people discuss about this issue. And if the Quran was the real word of God, why are we still discussing about this subject? Why is it not clear, like, just kill the apostate? Why is it so metaphorical?
Because it is so vague and ambiguous the way that the entire Quran is. I mean, there's nothing clear in the Quran. You need to...
There's nothing clear in the Quran if you don't know the Bible. If you actually know the Bible, then... I mean, in a way, the Quran is sort of like downloaded content, you know. Because, like, well, the first time I read the Quran, the only reason I even knew what it was talking about is because I was familiar with the biblical narrative. You know, the Quran constantly says, did we not, such and such? Do you not remember when, such and such? It keeps making references to the Bible. If you don't know the Bible, you have no fucking clue what the Quran is talking about.
Okay.
I mean, you know, the writers of the Quran expect the reader to be familiar with Judeo-Christian law.
Can I just say what Raven just said there is exactly what I said about a month ago, that even though I came from a Muslim background, educated in Islam and Hadith, I actually understood the Quran more when I decided to study Genesis to Revelation, and it really opened my eyes to what the Quran really is. It was only through the Bible did I understand what the Quran was about and who.
Yeah, I mean, when I read it, it's like talking about like, do you not remember the covenant? Well, of course I do. That's in Genesis. Do you not remember? Do you not remember the promise of Allah with the Pharaoh? Well, yeah, of course I do. That's in the book of Exodus. So I mean, you know.
There's another thing. Did you know you can't leave Islam? Because if you ask any of the Muslims about people who leave Islam, they say that they were never a Muslim in the first place.
Yeah. Well, that's what was said to me. I was accused of that. That, well, you were never a Muslim in the first place, even though I could recite.
So you can never be an apostate.
Well,
you can't be an apostate because you were never a member.
Yeah, but that's just their way of saying that. Well, you know, you got to understand the mindset of a Muslim. He's basically but your actions are, this religion is false. Allah is not the real God. Muhammad is not a real prophet. So they'll have to use any line of reasoning to soften the blow in the community. So one of those is where you were never really a Muslim, or you never understood Islam in its truest way. That's why.
Well, the reason for that a lot of the time is because they really are believers. So they have a certain mindset and a certain view of Islam where it's obviously true. So from their point of view, obviously you didn't understand it, because if you understood it, basically, you know, if you looked through my eyes, you'd see it was true. And through my eyes is obviously the correct way, because I can see that it's true. So Walid, can you actually speak? Because you've been quiet for a while. I'm wondering, like, if you have any comments, like what your experience was, because you said that you left Islam 6 months ago.
Yes, sorry. I was busy. Sorry. Yes, 6 months ago.
What sect were you in? Like Sunni, Shia, Ahmadiyya?
Yes. Well, it was. I was a Sunni. I was born as a Sunni Muslim.
Okay.
But then,
school of thought, or just like general Sunni?
just a normal Sunni. I didn't know what Sunnism was, so I was researching about Sunnism, what is Sunnism, and I was also researching about Shiism. I found that Ali ibn Abi Talib, the main figure of Shiism, was very interesting to me. So I also did my research about Shiism, also about Quran-only Islam, and I found that Quran-only Islam was very interesting to me, because they were more progressive than Sunnis and Shias. They were more free thinkers than Sunnis and Shias, and it is a good idea to follow one book alone. And then follow
a lot of Sufis are quite free thinkers, aren't they?
Well, Sufis, the problem with Sufis, they do things which are not in the Quran or in the Hadith. They do many of those crazy things. So the Quran alone, I really like Quran alone, because you follow one book, you're a free thinker. They are very intelligent people. On YouTube, you can find them. They're very they have very critical thinking skills, and they reject the Hadith because of many things. But at the end, it was not realistic for me to follow the Quran alone, because following the Quran alone, you will miss many things: how to pray, how to do those rituals. So then I just decided to be Muslim alone and to be selective. So just to follow the Hadiths, which I like, actually. So yes, at the end, I was interested about ex-Muslims, like why do Muslims leave Islam? So I was watching videos on YouTube why Muslims leave Islam, and I thought that their reason why they left Islam was very good. There was nothing wrong with it. So I was researching about these controversial things in Islam, about slavery, about let's say what happened in Banu Qurayza, many of the stupid stories in the Quran and the Hadith. And I was thinking maybe that Islam is not the true religion. And also made my research about Mormonism and other cults. And I thought maybe, Prophet Muhammad just was an ordinary man, not a prophet of God. And another thing is that about prophets, you know, in the Quran it says that Allah sends messengers to every human civilization. So to the European people, to the
to every people
yes,
of every.
yes, to the blacks, to every kind of people. But I don't see any evidence of that. If you read the Quran, you only see biblical figures like John the Baptist, Jesus, Suleiman, etc. So that was also a hint for me that maybe the Quran is not the word of God, because I don't see any other monotheistic religion outside Jerusalem, outside like the first monotheists were Jews, and Christianity is also actually from Judaism. Jesus was a Jew, and his 12 apostles, they were also Jews. So Islam also takes its sources from that, you know. And maybe in Hinduism you have some monotheism, but not in Buddhism, not in Taoism, not in, I don't see any European religion which is monotheistic, or African religion. They were all polytheistic. So that was my question.
I just mentioned Buddhism and Taoism. Like in Buddhism, the Buddha himself actually taught against the concept of a creator God. And in Taoism, you know, it's not really like Abrahamic religions, because Abrahamic religions are fixed, whereas in Taoism, you know, it's flexible. You know, the heavens are constantly changing, constantly in flux.
Yes. What about the Mayans? About the Aztecs? About the native Indians? They were also not monotheists. So you know, it is a very crazy to say that, you know, they were all changed and people changed their religion. You know, that is very stupid. So that's why.
One of the things that made me laugh was where Joseph Smith claimed that Native Americans are actually a lost tribe of Jews, and the reason they have red skin is because they were cursed by God. Yeah, it's always one of the things that I found quite amusing is Islam teaches that the fitrah is the natural state of all humanity, that we're all naturally inclined to believe in one God. And it's like, if you look at every single religion, how many of them teach only one God?
And yes, why, you know, why? And there's a hadith that, you know, there were 140,000 monotheistic prophets sent to the whole earth. Where are they? Where are their footsteps? If there were 140,000 prophets, you know, everything will be monotheistic. But at the end, you know, polytheism won over monotheism. That's the story. And you know, somebody from Arabia has to fix that.
When you first came here, you had just left Islam, and then like 2 weeks later you went back. What happened there?
When?
I can't tell you the date, but I remember the first time you came here, you said that you were leaving Islam, and then 2 weeks later you came and you said, no, you couldn't do it.
I don't remember.
Is my memory mistaken now?
Yeah, I think your memory. I say that I was questioning, I was doubting the Islam.
Yes, and then didn't you go back at one stage?
I don't think so. I think that I was stopped praying, and then at the end, you know, I just stopped believing.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood this, because I thought that you said that you tried this and you couldn't. It was too much for you to abort everything.
I don't remember that. Maybe, but okay. What I can remember is that after that week.
I'm asking you the question that I tried asking before: is if you were brought up in this and you believed this and you lived Islam, how do you feel after leaving? Because if you ask ex-Muslim, Introverted Smiles, and you know, all these other people, they say there is a huge, big void in the beginning. Did you also have this?
What feeling?
That there is a huge empty space where normally you would say, okay, now I need to go pray. And this prayer becomes part of your everyday routine. And when you don't do it, there's something missing.
Well, I was not praying while I was a teen, but I think, you know, I felt not spiritual anymore, because, you know, prayer was a part of my spiritual life. You know, when you clean yourself before prayer, and it really gives you a good feeling, you know. So that was the thing that I missed, and that was the most hard thing, you know.
Okay, and then
the connection with God, I think. Yes. What did you say?
Did you know about ex-Muslims? Did you know about these groups?
Uh, I don't know about groups, but I've talked with some ex-Muslims, some Dutch ex-Muslims, or some Dutch ex-Muslima on YouTube, on Facebook, and I had a conversation with her on Hangout why she left Islam.
Okay, but you didn't know about the CMB, the Council of Ex-Muslims in Britain.
Yes, I know. I watched their YouTube channel. I know.
Okay, how is okay? What does it feel like if you know that there are others who feel similar to what you feel like? Did you ever contact anyone like that, or is this something that you realize? Oh, there's other people. Okay, cool.
I contacted yes, one woman. I had a chat with her on a Hangout. Also, a Tunisian ex-Muslim, and also a Belgian ex-Muslim. But I did not contact them in real life.
But not through the CMB.
No, because I don't live. I live in Holland.
Okay, everybody knows the
You've
CMB.
actually, like CMB has members all around the world.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in the UK.
Oh, okay. I don't know that.
This is a pity because I would have loved to know what kind of a feeling it is, because I can only imagine this or try to imagine it, that you are part of a group and suddenly you realize, no, I don't really belong here. And then you leave the group, but now all the rituals, all the mannerisms, all your identity that has been associated with that group is suddenly missing. How do you feel this? And then how do you feel if you then come across the CMB and you feel, shit, there's 1,000 people, 2,000, 5,000 who have exactly the same experience, who have gone through exactly what I have gone through now, and they have mastered it, they've managed it, and what it is like to be able to compare notes with them. So this is something that I would love to hear from somebody of what kind of a feeling that is.
Yeah, you have many people with other situations. Like I don't have that. I don't have Orthodox parents, so I didn't have any problem socially, and I didn't tell anybody. Maybe a friend of mine, but I didn't find it important to tell people why I left Islam or not. I told my dad. I told my dad and sister. They only know it. But you have people with other situations. Like you have people who leave Islam in Muslim country. They have a harder time than me. They have to also, let's say, it's also socially hard. When it is, let's say, this Friday prayer in an Islamic country, and your colleagues or friends ask you to pray with them. What's your excuse to say no?
Exactly.
And I am free. I live in a secular society. So I'm free to go to the mosque or not. I don't have that pressure.
And your family?
My father doesn't care, if I go or not. Sometimes he asks me, but he doesn't care.
So I don't have comment that when you said, sorry, I'm leaving, I'm out.
Yes. He said to me, well, Islam is part of your culture. Islam is a part of your identity. You're still a Muslim. Don't say that you're not a Muslim. You have to be a Muslim, or else you will die like an atheist or something. So you have to keep Islam as your own identity because you were born as a Muslim and it is in our culture. I did not agree with him, but there was not a big discussion about it. I still have a good relationship with my father.
Okay, well, what have we learned? We've learned that everybody has the individual outlook. Everybody has a different group that they belong to. Everybody has a different interpretation of what Islam is. And there are no two people who have the same outlook and the same interpretation of Islam and how they see the entire spiritual, physical, political, or whatever side.
Well, I see Islam as a great comedy, and that's how I take it. That's why I enjoy it so much, talking about it.
Yeah, but you don't laugh yourself to death.
Pretty much at times when I listen. The best aspect I love is on a radio or TV when people ask questions. Most of the time people are not clear, and then there's a lineup of people asking questions to Maulanas. I remember one question where this guy phones a Maulana. He's got his wife in Pakistan, and he got married, and she was coming to U.S. So he called the Molana, and he said that, you know, my wife is in Pakistan, and I'm going to bring her to UK. And he says her father can drop her off at the airport, and then she will be travel here, and I'll be picking up here. Is it still, you know, in the plane, she will be without a mahram? Is it okay, or what should I do? These kind of questions I love. You know,
because they're so silly.
I think one of the funniest I heard, whereas it says like in the hadiths that a woman is permitted to travel alone. I think it's a certain number of days. And like scholars nowadays are trying to work out, well, okay, so if she's allowed to travel alone for like, what is it, 2 days or 3 days, how many miles would she cross? And then they give rulings about how many miles she can travel on a plane or something.
Oh, yeah,
to a flight attendant from Emirates about that, yeah.
Yeah, and also they ask questions about when they're traveling. Apparently, you can shorten your prayers while you're traveling.
Yeah.
And then they ask questions, you know, I'm going from, I got to go from here to there, and can I shorten my prayers? And then sometimes they have 2 Maulanas sitting there. One would say, yeah, if it is 30 kilometers, yeah, you can shorten your prayers. Other will say, no, 52 kilometers.
And then they get out their shoes and beat each other up.
What about like with time zones, where like you know, you do your morning prayer to greet the sun, and then like you get on a plane, and you come and like you arrive maybe 3 hours before sunrise in that time zone. Like, do you have to do the morning prayer twice?
Yeah.
This is a huge dispute. I mean, look at the guy on the space station. How was he allowed to pray? They had 150 people come together and discuss exactly how he was supposed to pray. And at the end of the day, they said, listen, pray how you feel like. And that is what the advice should be to everybody.
Do any of you guys...
I still remember there was imams, I think in Dubai, that made a ruling that Muslims can't be on that planned NASA mission to Mars.
Yeah. And I've just seen, now that we're at the end, Rob from my favorite South African he's gracing us with his company. Welcome, Rob. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show.
Hello.
What are you doing here?
Unmute. Hello.
Hi, how's it?
Am I muted, or can you hear me?
No, we can hear you. We're listening to you with bated breath.
Hearing you
Fantastic.
555.
Let me just turn it up a little bit. I caught the end of your show. I've just got back home now after doing some work, and caught the end of your show. Hopefully I'll be able to tune in next week. And I love your videos, by the way, your critiques and stuff. You seem to have so much fun doing it.
Absolutely.
Are you based in South Africa?
No, not anymore.
Okay, cool. Because I picked up the accent. So, no.
And I was so proud that I got rid of it. But I guess a boykie is a boykie, eh?
No. Once you get there, you get there. No, it's... to chat online with some other people. I didn't get down there this week. I was working, so hopefully we'll get down perhaps next weekend.
Oh, that'd be brilliant! Yeah.
Yeah, I try to do some filming. I tend to get caught up with some of the other atheist guys there in Speaker's Corner, so I don't get a chance to always speak to as many Muslims or Christians as I'd like to and record the conversations. I wish there was somebody that came down with a camera. I'd like to have all my conversations recorded, but I'm trying to do that with a camera on my hat and all that sort of stuff. But
yes, I saw that.
It's a bit shaky because I'm like nodding my head and looking around. So yeah.
Listen, do you think we can have a one-on-one sometime and just put it on the channel just to get some background info on each other?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let me know. Sort of most of the evenings, once I'm back from work, I can do something like that. So yeah, let me know.
Brilliant. Okay. And I'll just send you a note with email or something like that, and then we can get together on Skype or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely. And greetings to all the other guys. I can't see all the names on there, but and I've just caught the end of it now, so I don't know anybody else other than you were talking about apostasy, etc.
I'll do the hadith of the day, hadith of the week, and then with Rob, I'm just going to do sometime during the week. We'll just have a discussion, and then whenever. And what is left to do is just the hadith, which is Bukhari, volume 1, book 4, and it's number 139. And it's about ablutions. And I think everybody knows that the ablutions in Islam have nothing to do with cleaning or anything. It's a ritual that can be performed with dirt or sand or anything. It's a ritual. It has nothing to do with germs or anything of that sort. Nobody knew about this in those days. And this is narrated by Abbas bin Tamim, which is my uncle, asked Allah's apostle about a person who imagined to have passed wind during the prayer. Allah's apostle, which is Muhammad, replied, he should not leave his prayers until he hears a sound or smells something. End of hadith. Yeah, great. Now we've really learned something. We've learned what to do at the mosque. If you imagine that you're going to fart, yes, you need to wait.
It sounds so funny, doesn't it?
Well, this is why we always have this hadith of the week as a final segment of the show, just to leave it in high spirits, because they're really funny.
What would be great in the future, especially any of the guys on here anyway, if there's something that you feel is useful, I will take up as a topic, especially if I've got some background on it, or if I can do some study up on it, and then I'll ask the guys in Hyde Park, because I go regularly, so I know the regular guys, and there's some guys that have got arguments, etc. I haven't found a good one yet, but they're reasonably intelligent guys. I know you do mock them a little bit, and that's fine, but they can have a conversation, most of them. And there's probably half a dozen of them that I know that go regularly, that can mostly defend a position or at least understand what you're talking about.
Do you know LDM?
What kind of stuff are you looking for?
So any sort of questions around, what do they believe and why? So I'm not that clued up like some of you guys might be on the in-depth part of the surahs and the hadiths. Although I've got a Quran that I'm reading through, and I've got.
Well, do you know what the hadiths teach about Adam and Eve?
No.
Well, it says that the first humans were 90-foot giants made of clay.
Okay, that's not something that comes up even at Hyde Park. They've never talked about that. So great to chat to you guys. Definitely wouldn't want to hijack this, and I know you're going to finish off now. But
no.
Next time we come around again, next Sunday, if I'm on the Sundays, I'll make a note, and if I'm available, because I typically, if I'm in Speaker's Corner, then I'll only get home a bit late. So I typically get there sort of 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon, and maybe stay until 7 or 8. Probably be home a bit earlier nowadays that it's becoming winter. So yeah, if I can catch the show, then I'll definitely do that.
UK time, it starts at 7 p.m.
Okay, great.
I watched a couple of the videos on Speaker Corners, and I noticed, most of the people, you're arguing with people who got less than 20/20 vision, and it just get boring.
Yes. I've got to sort of pick up the right guys. Obviously, I've had a challenge with Shabir, which a lot of people know about. But there are sort of 5 or 6 other guys, and I certainly want to chat to them. The one thing maybe for the next show for people to think about is they're coming now with this claim, and there's this London Dawa school that Gin and Tonic knows very well, and he's done so many refutation videos. But they're coming with this thing now about rationality. How do atheists account for rationality? And I didn't do the best job with Imram. I am now much better with that, but that may be something to chat about perhaps next time, because that's a philosophical / naturalistic position to take from a non-believer's point of view, and that's obviously borrowed from Christianity and slightly tweaked. And the presuppositionalist argument has really been debunked now extremely well by really knowledgeable guys. I've watched a few long 3-hour debates with us, and these guys have really put that to sleep now. But I want to get a really good refutation that I can get on video to stop these Muslims coming and asking atheists to account for rationality on our worldview.
Well, it has nothing to do with being an atheist. It's a completely separate issue. But no, just what you said about it comes from Christianity, but it's slightly tweaked. I've always found it quite amusing that pretty much the greatest Dawa figure alive today is William Lane Craig.
Yeah. This is the thoughts as well. The thing with LDM is they were taught by Tsources who took everything from Craig and from the Christian apologists. This is why you see everything that the Christians said, popping up now in LDM or GTM or whatever they call themselves. Yes. So but there are a couple of very, very straightforward, very easy to do points that you can easily go and really knock them silly just by asking a single question. So yes. But we can chat about that either next week. We can make an entire show on apologists now, because I do like one apologist show every 2 months.
Yes, and it's
Do you
interesting.
think that you'd be able to get any of the people from Speaker's Corner to come on the Gin and Tonic show?
Come on, I've written to all of them. They're all scared. Nobody comes here.
Well, I'm asking the speakers, if he's actually talking to them in real life. Oh, and I've just realised, when I said
yes.
that the Gin and Tonic show starts at 7 p.m, it will be 6 p.m. when the clocks go back. Because it's 6 GMT, so...
Okay, so most likely I might miss
Wow, Raven! Wow!
What? Are you mocking me?
Yes.
Why? I'm being helpful. It's always
No,
time for
you're
the boss
not.
to go back.
You're making a noise.
I think Walid is asking a question there. Me too. Where do you live? Speaker's Corner. Oh, well, sorry, where do I live? I'm South London, so I trek into Speaker's Corner. It takes me about an hour to get in, so I'm in the South London area. So if you are there and you meet up, if you know what I look like, have a look at the videos, you'll see me there. And yeah, feel free to come over and have a chat. So yeah, I'll see if I can, but it'd be good to do an apologist thing, because I think most of the atheists, there's one or two, there is an atheist guy there that's actually quite clued up. He's quite philosophical. He studied quite a bit on philosophy. There's another one that's quite good on cosmology. The other guys, and there's one that knows a little bit about evolution. The other guys tend to be more, they just don't believe, but they can't really articulate it in a very concise way. And when they get, faced with rationality and some of the philosophical arguments, that's not their strong point. And that's things that I am interested in. So if I get, faced with that, instinctively I know it's bollocks, but I don't always have the particularly perfect answer to it there and then. So I'll go away and do some study like I have now on the rationality type thing. So I'll have a better handle on that.
I haven't seen the rationality one. Is that now in a video somewhere?
Yeah, if you go to my channel, you'll see one where, because I typically put the titles as Muslim versus atheist, and I'll give sometimes a description. I notice a number of the Muslim channels say how the Muslim defeated this one, or it made this person look stupid. And I that's obviously quite a biased view. So I don't tend to put a biased title up. I'll just go Muslim speaks to atheist or whatever, and here's more or less what they talked about. And people can make up their own mind. I typically have a lot of Muslim subscribers and viewers. So obviously I get a lot of those views, and very few that are articulate that I can actually... Oh, somebody's speaking, sorry.
No, there were some packets that were sidetracked. Thunder, can you mute, or should I mute you?
Oh, I'll mute myself then. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes, have a look. There'll be one on my channel that I said Muslim versus atheist, and it'll have the picture of Imran, which you know quite well. And his position is, about rationality. But there was also one with Tortoise as well, who approached the London black atheists. But those guys are not philosophical guys, and so they didn't really have good retort. And obviously he was talking at a higher level than what they could sort of take in. But afterwards, unfortunately, wasn't caught on camera. Andy had this guy that got some philosophical background, actually did have a conversation with Tortoise, which unfortunately wasn't caught on camera. And he made a few good points, but when he told me about it afterwards, and so unfortunately that wasn't recorded because I wasn't there that day.
That's a pity.
Rob, quick question.
Go ahead, yeah.
What does it even mean? How do atheists account for rationality? What does one have to do with the other?
So typically this is borrowed from presuppositionalism, which is along the lines, they've got it slightly differently, but basically these Muslim guys claim that how do we get rationality? Because if you use evolution or you use the philosophical argument, how do you account for it? How do you explain from an epistemological point of view? How do you explain rationality from a naturalistic viewpoint? They claim that it's easy to do because God gave them rationality. And there's a lot of problems with that, but that's their view. And so they go, well, you don't have a God. How do you account for it? And of course, when I mentioned evolution, Imran in particular tried to say, oh, well, evolution can't give you rationality. And Hamza, I didn't speak to Hamza, but the other video where Hamza was speaking to the black atheist, he basically said, well, if there's an atom and it hasn't got the potential for rationality and so forth, how can you have rationality? So they were doing a reductionist argument to try and, present the view that it's impossible from a naturalistic point of view that rationality can come into being, and so it must have been from some other way, and of course they have the answer for that.
But that's also kind of wrong. I mean, humans by nature are not logical. If we were logical, we'd all be math whiz. We'd be like Vulcans. I mean, if you look at so much of the natural world, I mean, look at physics. So much of physics, so much of what actually is real and actually is rational from a scientific point of view is completely unrational to us, because we don't have that sort of mind.
It depends what you mean by rational.
We have to be rational. This is why we have so many different scientific processes. This is why so much of it just really does seem like magic, because we're not really rational. Rationality is something that you have to learn and really keep in mind.
Well, I agree with it. The scientific processes, Darwinism doesn't explain the scientific, or evolution doesn't explain the scientific method per se, but the rationalism, it depends what you mean. And so when Andy, the smart guy, asked, sorts us off camera, what does he mean by rationality? He kind of said insight, because you've got to pin them down on what do they mean by rationality, because you've taken a particular meaning that they may or may not agree with. So it is worth asking, and that's one thing I didn't do with Imran, is asking, what do you mean by rationality? I assumed rationality means based on the laws of logic, but I didn't ask the question, and so, off we went. But if there's a really good guy, if you want to understand a little bit of this, and I'm still studying it, Ozymandias Ramesses II.
Oh, yeah.
If you know him. And he's involved with another group. He's one of the top guys.
No, we are very friendly with the Magic Sandwich Show.
Oh, are you? Brilliant.
Yeah, because we started off together, where actually Atheismo used to host this show. And then we used to work together with DPR, where, for example, he used to get us in on his charity drive and things like that. And I used to be a regular thing on the feature on the DPR, on the MSS, when DPR asked me, listen, can you come in and explain something on Islam and blah, blah, blah. And then they went off. They went off into more politics and more sociology and other things. And we stuck to Islam. This is why we don't have this interaction so much anymore.
Ah, okay, right.
So when Hamza said by rationale, he meant like intuition,
insight. Insight. So,
insight.
Yeah.
Well, what did he mean by that? Like intuition, like picking up body language, or what?
That's a good question. Andy kind of didn't explain that, or I didn't understand what he meant by insight so much. So I'd have to ask somebody particularly what they mean by that. So, because obviously he's got his acolytes, which is obviously Imran and that guy there's another guy that's on the channel, not on my channel, somebody else's that I'm subscribed to. Yes, that's the one. Yeah. So he's standing up there shouting about, how atheism is an incoherent worldview, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the push from those guys now. They're on the attack. In a sense, but I'd have to ask him specifically what he means by that. And then when he says insight, well, what do you mean by insight? So I've got to break it down, because otherwise we talk it up, at a high level, and then they can easily avoid it or say it means X and Y. So I've got to pin them down to what they mean by those particular things. But if you look at the channel I mentioned, he's gone through great refutations on this, because essentially from a philosophical point of view. We assume certain things like, quote, the law of logics, which, relates to rationality. So we assume it's a priori, it's axiomatic, it's self-attesting, and they do the same. But then they try to shift it to say, oh, well, God gives this to us. And that there's a problem with that. I don't want to go into too much now, because I'll use it next time I go on to Speaker's Corner.
Okay.
I will actually give Hamza Solstice credit for one single thing. Because of actually listening to Hamza, I actually learned something that I didn't know before. Mm-hmm. I was watching a debate with him where on video, and he said, "Can you
give us the nutshell version?"
Yeah, he said, "Can a mother give birth to herself?" And my first thought was, well, yeah, obviously cloning, but I assumed he meant without using a lab, and that was a question I'd never thought of before. And, can a mother give birth to herself? I'd never thought of that. And I was very curious to find out the answer. As it turned out, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, I gave several examples in the refutation video.
Yeah.
I was
Speaking of
gonna
that, New Mexican whiptail lizards are a fantastic example of an entire species of naturally occurring clones.
Yeah, I'm going to get through the rest of yours, all of your refutation videos, because not only are they educational, but they're amusing. I just love the way that you're so passionate and you kind of laugh about it and so forth. I think I need to be more like that. When I go to Speaker's Corner, I'm quite serious because I want to understand what people believe and why do they believe it. And I don't want long stories. And of course, some people give long stories, but there are a few guys that will answer the question genuinely, straight up.
There's different approaches. Do you know Peter Boghossian?
Yes, I do. I've actually got one of his books, How to Create an Atheist, and then he's got another one. He's got this Athos app that's come out as well.
Obviously... And you know Magna Bosco?
That name sounds familiar. I'd have to look up the stuff again now.
Okay, because he is now the on-the-ground guru when it comes to street epistemology, or this applied thinking about why you believe what you believe. And this is brilliant because you're going away from the debate, you're going away from the topic, you're going away from the nitty-gritty of having to prove something what is within the text that you can then go re-massage and reinterpret, retranslate, and blah, blah, blah. You're now going only to the one person, and you're only looking at what that person thinks about whatever it is they think. So you don't talk about Islam anymore. You're talking about the person. And this is what is so brilliant.
Yes. I remember a while ago, a Muslim said to me that you can't provide evidence that someone loves you. And I just looked at him and I went, mate, love without evidence is called stalking.
Yes, they often bring up the, those sort of abstract terms, but you can prove through the effects. And so, yes, you can't prove the word love because it's just a label that we give an emotion, but you can see the effects of that emotion when people interact.
Okay, can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely, go sir.
Rob, are you going to be available next week?
Yes, pretty much in the evenings, not so much during the day, but in the evenings.
I'm talking about next Sunday.
Next Sunday, yeah. Well, if I'm going to Speaker's Corner, then I just have to make sure I'm back a bit earlier than I would normally be. So yeah, I can be next Sunday for sure.
The reason why I'm asking, why don't we make it apologists next week? Raven, you come up with 3 points with 3 one-sentence answers, not a book, just 3 sentences, just quick, just show what the contention is, the solution, so that we just generate a couple of points that you can go and address, because you've got good ideas. And we can just sort of bounce them around. And then I will ask the same of GP, for example. I don't know if Thunderous will come up with something. Alassa always has great ideas. And then we'll just see if between us we can come up with 10, 15 ideas. And then the refutation to those things that we commonly come across, and just to bounce them around. How's that as a suggestion?
Well, one of the things that I know of, it's impossible for any Muslim to be a real believer, because in Surah Al-Anfal number 8, it says the real believers are only those to whom, when Allah is mentioned, their hearts overcome with the fear. You mention the word to Allah in front of any Muslim of the world, their heart will not overcome with fear.
You see, that's a nice idea. That's a nice one-liner that you can throw out there.
Show me one Muslim. Nobody can be a real Muslim. It's impractical.
Bye, guys.
Sexy thing.
Talk to you next week. Have a good one.
Great to meet you guys.
I'll speak to you during the week. I'll set up something and then see you all next week here, when we're going to be talking about apologists. Once again.
Sounds good.